Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, we're going to be going over a 2021 Toyota Tundra TRD in the limited package with Voodoo Blue as the color. I think this is a great truck to use for today's video, which we're basically be going over the truck and explaining whether or not you should wait for the 2022. But first and foremost, a huge shout out and thank you to the Larry Miller Toyota here in Murray for giving me some time with this truck. Check out their inventory link below. Let's get into the video. Now under the hood of the Tundra for the last eon or so, we have a 5.7 liter V8 that goes through a 6-speed automatic transmission with fuel economy being 13 around town and then 17 on the highway, and power outputs being 381 horsepower and then 401 pound-feet of torque. Now we don't have anything confirmed, but there are some rumors that the engine might change slightly and that they might put a different transmission in the truck. So if you like the reliability of this setup and all that kind of stuff, well, then it's worth going for. Now let's go to the front end of the Tundra. So first off, most of the front end hasn't been changed for quite some time. The biggest changes they've made over the recent years has been the LED lights here at the front end, which these LED lights look really, really good. And then everything else, like the fog lights, kind of like the bumper, grille design, all that has been pretty similar for a pretty long time. But again, if you like the looks of this, then it makes sense to go for this because again, nothing's confirmed, but apparently the front end design is going to change quite a bit. What I think is going to change, obviously, is the headlight design. Obviously, they'll still probably do LEDs, LED fog lights. I mean, that's kind of like a mainstay in the truck segment. But just like the overall design, definitely is going to change. Coming around the side here, we've got two 75mm tires with 18-inch wheels wrapped around them in the front and over in the rear. And then since this one is the TRD package, it has the Bilstein shock absorbers, which if you guys kind of want to see what that whole setup looks like, you can see the blue shocks right inside of there. And then as for this kind of whole setup here, I think that it's going to be pretty similar with the new truck. I still think they're going to obviously they'll offer the TRD package. With the shocks, I think that's not going to change a huge amount. I still get the mud flaps that'll come with the TRD package, I'm sure. And then in terms of the rear, this is where some truck manufacturers have been changing stuff quite a bit. You can see the rear right there. Some truck manufacturers have been getting rid of leaf springs and adding 5-link coil suspension. My guess is they'll probably just leave the leaf springs here with the Tundra. But other than that, again, the whole side view will probably change slightly, but I don't think this will change as much. I think that the side of the truck will look relatively similar to the current truck. Now, are they ever going to add a more seamless remote start system? Well, they haven't in their other vehicles, so I don't think that's really going to change. You're still going to have to click the key fob a million times to start it up. Now, the payload on this truck is 1,185 pounds, and I mean, that's a pretty good payload for a truck. They might increase the payload slightly for the new generation, but it's already capable enough. And then notice that this one has the whole bed liner set up and everything, which looks really nice. I love how the hooks there are still Voodoo Blue. That's definitely a cool little touch right there. But I think the payload might go up slightly, but I don't think that's going to be a huge change from this generation. And as for the tailgate, maybe they'll make it lighter, but it's not too heavy. Now let's go over the rear of the Tundra. First off, towing capacity is around 10,000 pounds. Another big change, I think, will be with the taillights here. They've been using these old school taillights for quite some time. I think they'll go to full LEDs with the new Tundra. I mean, that just kind of makes sense at this point if they're going to redesign the truck. And then you've got the parking sensors here on the bottom. I think that's all going to stay the same. I think the biggest change to the rear, though, again, will just be the taillights. Now let's go to the door panel here. So you've got the soft touch here, and then you've got kind of like the rubber trim down below. I think they'll do more leather in the new Tundra, but I think for the most part they'll keep the materials the same, where they're just super durable and easy to replace. And then notice you've got the first aid kit here on the bottom of the seat. There's some storage underneath, and then when you want to lower the seat, well, of course I lower it down onto the box. Then you just do that whole setup, but let's actually pop in. So stepping in, ooh, pretty high. The space in the Tundra is great, so I don't think that they really need to do anything with the space with the truck. I don't think they're going to change that. They might add some more charging ports, all that kind of stuff. This whole setup and everything, I think this will be all the same. And then as for the seats, I think they'll be pretty similar material-wise as to what they do in the Tundra now. They might do a little bit different design on the seats, but I think the material use will be pretty much the same, just maybe using a little bit more of the leather. Let's go over the door panel here at the front. So again, you've got all the soft touch right here. And like I said, I think they'll just kind of continue more of that down below. Window controls, mirror controls, all that, that's obviously going to stay the same. Then you got the UBL sound system, and then the seats at the front, they kind of look like someone who's like got their shoulders like hunched up. It's kind of interesting and a little bit funny. And then notice you got all the stitching all down, and then the seats are kind of two-tone with the coloration with the power adjustments. As for the seats, I don't think those are, again, like I said, I don't think those are going to change too much with the new Tundra. That's just my guess. Okay, then you've got the floor mat, and then down below you've got the pedal layout, and then you've got the rear window right here, and then you've got like the light controls, mirror adjustments, all that kind of stuff. Steering wheel is manually adjustable. There's one more look before we pop in. Now here's the steering wheel on the Tundra. So you've got the leather wrapped around with the darker stitching, and then you've got the pages button right here at the controls to the center, voice command, volume controls, phone controls down below with the collision assistance, and then the lane departure assistance, and then cruise control kind of peeping there behind. As for this part, what I think might change, obviously you guys have seen the newer steering wheel kind of in the Highlander that they've recently released. Maybe they'll kind of take some of that stuff and throw it here onto the Tundra, but you guys remember, that wasn't like a huge overhaul. They just changed some things, and so maybe that'll make it into the truck. We'll kind of see. And then you got the light stock, turn signals, or sorry, windshield wiper stock. I really don't think that's going to change all that much. I think those are just pretty much going to stay the same. Here's a gauge cluster. You can see you've got RPMs on the left side. On the right side, you've got the speed, and then you do have that screen there in the center, which you can scroll through a couple different menus here with the truck. And obviously, we are low on fuel. And this truck's as new as it gets. 1 mile on the odometer. That is absolutely crazy. I pretty much never see that. And then this truck also does come with the blind spot monitoring. You guys probably saw that with the mirror. As for the mirrors, I think those are pretty much going to stay the same too. Forgot to mention that. But as for this gauge cluster, obviously they could do something a little bit more modern like what they have in the Highlander. They might go for that, but usually they're a little bit more conservative with the trucks, just because people buying these trucks, again, are looking for durability rather than the newest tech. And so maybe they'll kind of dress things up a little bit more. I don't think they'll go for like a full kind of like digital gauge cluster. I think they'll just do partial analog, but I think they'll definitely have like a bigger screen than what the Tundra currently has. Here's a whole center infotainment system. So first off, they have the circular vents, which I think those will stay, and the random kind of like storage space here at the top. And then as for the infotainment system, first off, you've got the backup camera right here. First off, I think they'll add like moving trajectory lines to the camera, because right now when you turn the steering wheel, nothing happens. And then I think they'll improve the resolution, so they'll just use a kind of a nicer camera. And then as for the rest of the infotainment system, it's definitely a nice unit, but you guys have seen in the new Sienna and then also in the Highlander, kind of the newer unit that they use for it, it looks somewhat similar, but then it's also kind of more modern. I think they're just going to throw that into the new Tundra. So if you like this screen, then it definitely makes sense to stick with the current generation Tundra with the whole setup that they have here at the center. And then down below, we've got the climate controls. So dual zone climate here in the Tundra, and then the Limited has the heated seats as well. This is where I think things might change just slightly. So they'll still have dual zone climate, and I think they'll still have like an analog climate area. They keep that pretty much in all the vehicles, but I think they'll add air conditioned seats to the Limited, because most vehicles that are kind of in this entry-level truck, entry-level luxury truck segment, all pretty much have air conditioned seats, and so I think that'll be a feature they'll add. And then you've got your 2-wheel drive, your 4-wheel high, and then your 4-wheel low. I think that's going to stay pretty much the same. And then down here, notice you've got the stability control with a couple of USBs, parking sensors, and then a full 12 volts. They'll obviously probably just add even more charging stations. That's just what happens as vehicles become more modern. Now, will it still have this awkward cup holder that's not really usable because it hits into the bottom of this little thing? I don't know, but I mean, it'd be cool because at this point, it's kind of just a meme. Now over here, we've got the stop start with the tow haul mode, and then the trailer brake controls. Obviously, that's going to stay because it's a truck. And then the window. Are they going to keep the gigantic window? I think so, because at this point, it's kind of like a Toyota thing. There's a lot of Toyotas that have it, and so I don't think they're going to get rid of that. I think they're just going to keep where the whole window goes down, whereas other trucks, I mean, it's a big differentiating factor. Other trucks only have part of the window open, whereas with the Tundra, it has the whole window open. Down here, more cup holders, and then we have the transmission selector for that 6-speed automatic, and it does have a manual shift function. Obviously, I think they'll do kind of more modern design with the shifter. This definitely looks kind of interesting. It's like a joystick from like an old video game. But again, we already talked about this. they might change the transmission, and for some people that's kind of scaring them. I've noticed that the Tundra values have gone up because a lot of people love this 6-speed for the reliability. Now, obviously, the engine transmission combo doesn't get the best gas mileage, 13 around town, 17 on the highway. So I think that's the biggest push for Toyota to do a more modern transmission, is just to get better fuel economy out of this engine, or maybe change the engine just slightly. But yeah, this might be a big change for the truck, the transmission selector, but then also the whole transmission itself. If you guys are wondering what transmission I think they'll go for, now in a perfect world, they would go for the 10-speed Aisin that they have in the LC 500. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're just going to do one of the 8 speeds that they have. But that 10-speed Aisin in the LC 500, it shifts quick, and it's just such a nice transmission. But I understand that might not be the best for a truck, but I still think it's a cool transmission. We have these center columns here that says limited at the top. Got a bunch of leather, and then it's absolutely massive. I still think they're going to keep the massive center console. I mean, that's kind of a truck thing, is to have an oversized center console. And then material-wise, like I said, I think it's going to be the same, but maybe they'll just use kind of more of the leather and maybe less of like the plasticky stuff with the center console. But again, Toyota's all about practicality, so they probably won't get rid of the storage space they have on the center console. And then coming over to the glove box, you've got the gigantic glove box with the shelf. Now, are they ever going to add like a dual glove box? Because other trucks have the glove box up at the top, whereas this just has the leather and the wood trim. Maybe, but I mean, probably not. I mean, this glove box down here is massive. It's more than enough, so they'll probably keep that the same. But again, I think that like all this like hard touch plastic and everything that's on the dash, I think that they're going to start using more leather and everything to kind of just make the Tundra interior just feel a little bit more upscale. Now up top here, we just have a single sunroof. Will they add a panoramic? I don't know, maybe. But I don't think that's a huge thought in their mind. But I mean, I don't know what the people at Toyota are thinking, but I don't really think they're worrying about the sunroof too much. And then you got a little sunglass holder, and then the controls for the sunroof. And I mean, me as a truck owner, I have a panoramic sunroof, and I never use it. So yeah, I don't think it's really a big deal for the truck. And then other than that, that's everything up top, and yeah. Now that we're done going with the Tundra Limited here, let's quickly get into the pricing. So in terms of pricing, this particular Limited stickers for about $51,000 before any type of market adjustment. Now as for the new Tundra, I think the pricing is going to be pretty similar. I think they'll go up slightly, but I don't think they'll go up a massive amount. That's definitely one of the cool things about the Tundra, is you get a ton of standard safety equipment and just a ton of standard equipment in general at not a crazy high price, whereas a lot of the other truck manufacturers make you pay for every single option, which is, it's just crazy, and it gets really expensive. So I think Toyota is definitely still going to kind of stick with that as much as they can. But yeah, this is kind of like a full tour of the current Tundra, and hopefully that helps you decide if you're going to get one of these or if you should wait for the 2022. I just want to give my final thoughts here on the current Tundra, and then whether or not you should get the new one. So obviously this Tundra is tried and tested. I mean, it's been out for such a long time. The engine, transmission, all that's super reliable. The whole truck, everything is just super reliable. So if you are looking for reliability, right, then the current generation Tundra is going to be the one to go for. Now, I'm not saying that the new Tundra is going to be unreliable. Everyone knows that Toyota has a really good track record for reliability, but let's face it, if they've had this truck out for, like, again, an eon or so at this point, then they've been able to work out everything, and like everything is just really buttoned up. Whereas the new one, I don't think there's gonna be major issues with it. But again, it'll be a first-year truck, and you know, I mean, there'll probably be a couple things they'll have to work out, but I don't think it's going to be crazy, because realistically, I mean, what I personally think is going to happen is they're going to keep the 5.7 V8, so that's going to stay the same. Maybe they'll get a little bit more power out of it, but I think they'll still be conservative. That's just what Toyota does. I think they'll do a more modern transmission to get better fuel economy, and then I think they'll just slightly change the exterior, more LED lights just to make it more modern, and then as for the interior, I think it'll stay mostly the same, except the gauge cluster and the infotainment system will slightly change again, just to be more modern. And so I don't think it's going to be like this crazy huge redesign where it's going to be like a truck that you don't recognize. I think it's just going to be a more modern looking Tundra with a little bit more modern tech inside of it. But for the most part, I think it's going to be pretty much the same. I think the biggest change to the truck will be the transmission if they end up changing it. But yeah, I think they will, because if they're doing a new truck, I think they're going to do a new transmission. That's going to sum things up for today's video, going over the 2021 Tundra and kind of giving my thoughts on whether you should get this or the new 2022 Tundra. Again, as always, a huge shout out and thank you to the Larry Miller Toy Dealer here in Murray for giving me some time with this Tundra so I could do this video. I'll see all of you in that next video.